From Damascus Nights by Rafiq Shami. Rafiq Shami was born in Damascus, Syria, 1946. He loves his city, Damascus, very much. He says that if you live there for 7 years, the city lives in you. And as a child, he used to ride his bicycle around, exploring the city and telling stories to his friends about Damascus. Today, his stories often refer to the Arabic tradition of oral storytelling and are addressed to the entire community. In this text, he tells us a story whose main character is called Salim, the coachman. And a coachman is a person who drives a coach or carriage. He begins by saying that it's a strange story, which spikes interest. He tells the story of Salim by starting that Salim lost his voice, and he says that he saw that happen. Syria, where Damascus is the capital, had a very tough time because of the depression, which is the collapse of the economy. Therefore, there was no work, and Salim needed to provide for his family. He had a wife, a daughter, and a son to feed. During that time, there was a lot of robbers because people didn't have money, so they became thieves. According to Salim, he needed to work because he had, so in order for him to work, he had to promise his guests that he'd make the journey without a scratch on them. Also, that they would keep all of their money and all of their bags. But there was a trick to it. Salim had good relations with the thieves. Again and again, he would drive from Damascus to Beirut, which is a hard journey, a very hard journey. Salim could safely do it because he had an arrangement with the robbers to leave them a gift on the side of the road. But soon after that, the secret was known, and every other coachman would do it. So now Salim was not special anymore. He needed to come up with a new way to make himself unique again. So he started to do something no other coachman could do. He would promise his guests he would tell them a story on the way so that they wouldn't feel the hardships of the journey. And as he was a great storyteller, he came up with such interesting stories. And he kept his promise. His guests didn't feel the road. But at one point, he was almost out of new stories. I mean, stories end, and he could only know so much. So he made a new strategy. He started to get his guests to tell him stories, and he would memorize their stories. He would spice it up and then tell it to the next guest. And this way, he had an infinite supply of stories. An old woman gave him that idea one day, as we see in that picture. We see her pictured, this old lady. The wrinkles on her face, the scarf, the way she looks at the scorching sun. It gives us a lot of feelings on how the atmosphere was back then. And the best thing that no two people would agree upon is that a good story would entertain them, would entertain everybody. Since we were children, we always loved a good story. In every page, we see a picture that is related to a story he tells in the text. There's the story of a shark, there's the story of the octopus, and people would be extremely interested in everything that he had to say, and they would have a lot of questions to ask. This text has several extremely beautiful stories. Salim was an incredible storyteller. And as we said in the beginning, it's a very ancient Arabic tradition of oral storytelling. It was amazing, and it was something that we were known for. So as we said, he would memorize the stories of his guests, spice it up, and tell it to the next guest. And this way he had an infinite supply of stories. Salim had an assistant with him because Salim was short-sighted, he couldn't see well. His assistant was called Tamim. He would help him see on the road. His assistant was small and weak. One day, he woke him up. Tamim woke Salim up and told him that something was glowing in the dark. From the picture, we can infer that the thing that was glowing in the dark were the eyes of the tiger. It was something that is very frightening, and Salim needed to reassure his assistant. So he told him, even if it was a tiger, I would be able to defend you. Do not be afraid, stand behind me. But Salim was half blind and he could barely see in the dark. So basically, he was lying. And he was very good at lying because he was a great storyteller, and most of these stories didn't actually happen. He tells a lot of stories, and after that, he tells, in my opinion, the most important story of them all. The story of how his great-grandfather, his great-great-great-grandfather, decided to live in the desert and why, which is, in my opinion, a gorgeous story. The most notable and the most important thing about this text is to understand the different ways people look at the world. For the way we see the world could change its very nature, just like Salim did. Just because I'm looking at something doesn't mean that I see it. If I looked at the world differently, the world would change in my eyes. Some people see the world beautiful, some people see it depressing. It all depends on how they see the world. The world itself is an object. The way we see it makes all the difference in the world. It changes the way we feel about it, and therefore it changes the way we act, the way we behave, the way we think, the way we talk. It changes everything. So it all depends on the way we see things. That could change the thing itself in our eyes, which is the most important.